We want to extend a very warm welcome and our thanks to everyone who's joined us here today for the first event in what we hope will be an ongoing movement to build community and bring power to all the people. Our town hall this evening will focus on the struggle to maintain accurate and academically rigorous ethnic studies in our community. We will share information with each other about the contract with community responsive education and how this interacts with many other important issues in the Pajaro Valley Unified School District. Issues like inequalities in our PVUSD schools, the school to prison pipeline, and the abnormally high suspension rates for people of color in PVUSD. These topics have inspired a lot of emotion in our community. So I want to introduce my wife and co-MC Lourdes to discuss some ground rules and community agreements.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our town hall. In order to have a productive evening, I want to discuss a very important rule. As Gabriel said, these topics are very sensitive and can inspire a lot of strong emotions. While we value open and honest discussion, we want this space to be safe and encouraging for everyone. Therefore, any disruptive or disrespectful behavior towards the speakers or participants will not be tolerated, and it will result in removal of the event. So please keep that in mind. That said, we want to foster a healthy discussion where everyone has a chance to participate. And we have laid out some basic community agreements, which consist of the following. Number one, as always, is be respectful, no attacking, and intent versus impact. In other words, be mindful not only of what you say, but on how it might affect others. That's the impact part. People have good intentions, but a comment you make may still have a negative impact on somebody. So even though we may not mean to say it, it might hurt somebody, and we need to be responsible for that. Step up and step back. So if we encourage people to speak, especially those who might be hesitant. So if you're speaking a lot, step back. If you're not speaking enough, step up. I'm one of those that speaks a lot, so I'll have to remember to step back. Is there anything else that somebody might want to add to the list that you think is important? You can just yell it out if you think there's something we should add to that list. Or are we good with those agreements? Good? Okay, great. So I'm going to pass the microphone back to Gabriel for the land acknowledgement.
In the spirit of solidarity and awareness, we acknowledge that the Pajaro Valley is the unceded territory of the Matsun-speaking Kalendaruk tribe. The Ama Matsun tribal band, comprised of descendants of the indigenous people taken to missions Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during the Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and to heal from historical trauma. All people are asked to support these efforts.
My name is Lourdes Barraza, and I'm the very proud parent of two students who you will hear from later tonight. They're students here at PVUSD. I came to the U.S. when I was about 6 years old, and I started attending PVUS schools, and I was a student here from first grade to graduation. I graduated from Watsonville High. Go Wildcats. And I actually was a teacher here for 10 years as well, and now I'm a clinical psychologist, but I've also worked here in the community. This is just my community, and I keep coming back to it. I became involved in this project when the board's decision to allow the CRE contract to expire was shared with me at a community circle at Milpa. This issue is important to me because I want my children to have information and knowledge that I had to wait to get until I went to the university. I want to spare them the shock of leaving a relatively small homogeneous community like Pajaro Valley and having systems of power and oppression smack them in the face like it happened to me. So now I will give the mic over to my husband so he can introduce himself.
Good evening. My name is Gabriel Barraza. I use he, him pronouns. I am also the proud parent of a wonderful 8th grade student and a wonderful 9th grade student at Pajaro Valley Unified. Throughout my life and career, I have always sought to serve vulnerable people, from people struggling with psychiatric disabilities to people with developmental disabilities, and now working with elders experiencing abuse. When I heard about the board refusing to renew the contract with CRE over false and defamatory allegations, I knew that we had to get involved. Members of the board decided that real ethnic studies was a threat to their desire to hold on to power. And they thought, like many boards before, that the community would just accept their inaction and the issue would go away quietly. We have to show our children that when people entrusted with power abuse that power, that cannot be allowed to stand. We want our students to move on from their education not only with practical skills to be able to work, but with skills to change the world. And real ethnic studies is the framework that can make it happen. We do want to acknowledge and thank our safety team from Palestine Solidarity Central. Please thank Nicola, Little Ellen, and Eric's. They all use they, them pronouns.
Before we introduce our first speaker, I want to give a brief timeline of how the issue with the CRE contract happened here at PVUSD. Our community has been caught up in a larger struggle that has been going on throughout the country, but hit California in 2019, when the initial draft of the Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum first required by Assembly Bill 2016. It was completed, and conservative groups began attacking the curriculum under the guise of anti-Semitism. While this was happening in Sacramento, PVUSD was preparing for the upcoming requirement for California school students to complete a course in ethnic studies. They began working with Dr. Allyson Tintiangco-Cubales and the Community Responsive Education Group. For 2 years, from 2021 to 2023, the current framework for PVUSD was developed, and staff were trained working along with CRE. In 2021, when Governor Newsom signed AB 101 into law, and a watered-down version of the curriculum that was supposed to be, it was a watered-down curriculum. The initial drafters of the model curriculum, including Dr. Tintiangco-Cubales, decided not to have her name included. Including Dr. Tintiangco-Cubales, they were defamed by those same conservative groups. In September 2023, 2 people attended the Board of Trustee meetings where the 3rd year and the final year for CRE contract was being discussed for renewal. As a result, the final phase of the contract, where the school administrators were to be trained to support and sustain ethnic studies, was abandoned. Therefore, the administrators were not trained and were not able to support their teachers. Now I have the honor of presenting to you the renowned Dr. Allyson Tintiangco-Cubales to discuss the importance of ethnic studies and the framework she and her colleagues at CRE developed in partnership with PVUSD. Please welcome Dr. Tintiangco-Cubales.
I did not know them till about 3 or 4 months ago. So I just want to acknowledge that the effort that they're making is huge and really has galvanized the community. I'm gonna ask my daughter to come up and help me with the slides. So I just a note, my family's in the room. My family has roots here in the area. My husband's father was a farm worker. And in Davenport, and then he grew up in Santa Cruz. I feel like I'm about to sing. I'm playing with this mic right now. Karaoke, wrong show. Okay, I'm Allyson Tintiangco-Cubales, and this is my daughter Mahalaya. She flew in from New York last night She goes to college out there, and then came in for a film showing last night. We have a film that came out called Art of Work, and she was in it, and so she was here last night. And so I'm really happy that she's home with me. And actually, I'm really nervous, so to have her here is really nice. Val Cubales is my husband, Val Tintiangco-Cubales. Raise your hand, yay. He's been a teacher in San Francisco Unified for almost 30 years, also an administrator, probably one of the oldest, not oldest, sorry, one of the longest standing teachers at Balboa High School. And if you're familiar with Balboa, people like to leave Balboa, but my husband stayed for almost 30 years there. And that means a lot, that we are an educator family. So I'm gonna just, I was told to talk about ethnic studies and and what it is, and then a little bit about what happened here in PVUSD, and I have a wonderful person that I got to work with, which is Claudia back there, so wave, wave, wave. And then I also have, and you won't see them here because they're not here today, them coming over the hill is kind of hard, but we had, I think, over 7 consultants work with PVUSD over the last couple of years. Amazing, amazing scholars and educators. So this work that I'm going to be talking, ooh, that was louder. I'll go like this. The work that I'm going to be sharing is not my work alone, so I want to acknowledge that. So, click. Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this thing called the Fields Framework that was co-developed by CRE and PVUSD. But to be quite honest, it was a really important conversation between me and Claudia that we spent an entire summer really developing after 2 years of work with PVUSD. And so just a little bit about me. I'm the founder and director of Community Responsive Education with Jeff Duncan Andrade and Glenda Makatangay. And I'm a professor in the College of Ethnic Studies. And also in the EDD program, I'm one of the faculty there. I'm also at UCLA as not a faculty member, but the director of curriculum for the up-and-coming open source textbook, which will be free. Go Bruins, go Bruins. I'll give a little bit more about myself throughout. I think oftentimes ethnic studies, we want to talk about it as scholars, but I feel like it's really personal to me, so I'm going to talk about it through a personal journey, along with what we did here in PVUSD. So in the next slide, you'll see kind of a breakdown of a lesson plan. And so what we did during our time here at PVUSD was to also share lessons and develop more lessons. But I want to acknowledge CRE came into PVUSD. There was already ethnic studies here. There were courses that were already being developed. We came in at a time to sort of shape and organize and even give more of a grounding in the field of ethnic studies. That's why we were here. And so we also taught them about this concept of the lesson plan. And you'll notice here, C1, C2, C3, C4. C1 is this idea of rituals, and you've already done some beautiful rituals with the land acknowledgement. I'm going to add another ritual that I like to do, which is an ancestor acknowledgement. Then we do a little bit of exercise, so you're going to get involved just a little bit today, not too much. And then we're going to go into what is ethnic studies, the origins of what it is, and then we're going to do some thinking around what kind of collaborations happened that created the Fields Framework. And then we'll have some closing dialogue. Am I talking too fast? Raise your hand. Okay. Sometimes I'm a little, so just to let you know, if I talk too fast, just tell me to slow it down, okay? Or if you can't hear me, let me know. Okay, so we're gonna go through this lesson plan in 10 minutes, quickly. So I'm gonna just go to the next slide and talk about these rituals. And so I'm going to go to the next slide, and it's going to be an image, and you'll see some Pajaro Valley folks there. This is my colleague, Catriona Escabel. She passed away only a few months ago. She was an amazing, amazing scholar, activist, who her last book on decolonizing your diet became super famous. So if you haven't picked up her book, please do so. But one thing that she was able to do before she left, this is quite literally about 3 weeks before she passed. Pajaro Valley, Bobby, his Peltz here, brought his students to San Francisco State. And Catriona, before she passed away, got to take a photo with them in the hallway. I don't know if you remember that, Bobby, but that's the kind of College of Ethnic Studies that we have, is people come out of their offices, and they were so excited to see the high school students from Pajaro Valley. They were like, okay, and so everyone brings their book out, which is really weird, but they bring their books out and take a picture with the students, and Catriona was able to do that, and quite literally a few weeks later, we lost her. And so I thought how powerful it is to be able to show a picture of one of our ancestors with the Pajaro students. So Catriona has taught me a lot. I'm actually going to be teaching her class in the upcoming school year on craftivism. I'm excited about that. You want to come knit with me, you can. Okay. Let's go to the next slide, Laya. Okay, so this is local ancestors. And I wanted to show a picture, 2 pictures of my family. And it's really my husband's family. So you'll see them in the camps here. These pictures were both taken in Davenport, and then my husband is that little chubby guy being held by the manongs in the top row. Do you see him? Isn't he cute? Oh, he's still cute. He's back there. Sorry, that was weird. If you haven't taken a class from me, this is what you get. So he grew up here. This was his world. His father was a migrant worker, and that meant a lot to our family. And I think important to consider that. My father also was, he picked flowers in Isherwood, and then became a busboy, and then spent the rest of his life as a janitor. And so I think important that you know about me, because ethnic studies is about knowing our stories. And that's why I start with all of that. So these ancestors are guiding me right now and actually making me feel welcome and home, along with all of you. And so I just want to acknowledge the beauty in the room. And there's so many people here. And I hope I get to talk to each of you tonight. Along with these ancestors, I want to also acknowledge, I think in the next slide, our descendants. And so these folks don't live in Pajaro Valley, but they have their roots, you know, like from our families, you know, and here they are. And this is why I do the work that I can currently do and continue to do, because it's for the next generation of descendants. Sadly to say that some of these people on this slide are also ancestors. And so it's to me, like, even though they're younger than me, they still guide me. Some of them, because of their passing, has inspired me to do even better and to do more and not to give up. So, yeah, there are babies, but they're out there in the sky now. Along with these descendants, I'm going to go on to the next slide, which is a question that I have for all of you. I know I'm not the only one who knows what ethnic studies is in the room. Absolutely not. This is not what ethnic studies is about, to have someone tell you what it is. And so I'm going to start with asking you to talk to the person next to you or a couple people next to you and answer this question in one word. What is ethnic studies to you? So I'll let you hear your voices out loud. Isang bagsak. Okay, I knew some people would clap. Isang bagsak, okay, no, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna explain it. Isang bagsak is one down. It actually comes from the anti-imperialist, anti-martial law movement in the Philippines. And when we yell it out loud, we clap. Isa means one, bagsak means down. Means we're all together. Ready? Isang bagsak. That was a little bit of a roll-off. We'll try it again. Ready? Isang bagsak. Closer. By the end, we'll have it down. Okay. So the one word, I heard more than one word. I heard you said your one word and then you explained it. That's okay. It's okay not to follow rules. That's important. So what are some of those words? Just yell them out. Me. Connection. Origins. I can't hear it. Unity. The whole group said roots. That was a plan or something. Yeah? What about over here? I heard some over here. Power. And the lack of power. And lots of power, right? My daughter just wrote a paper last night. She called me up in the 4 in the morning. She said, "Can you read this?" It was all about intersectionality and power. So, yeah, it's there. This is what ethnic studies is about, are all these words that you're saying. And then my daughter said to me, I said, "What's your word?" She grew up with ethnic studies. She has to have a word. She said, "Empathy." And I think that that actually is such a core concept in ethnic studies. Like, what does empathy really mean? What does it mean to be connected, that you actually feel something for people? So the word that I have is gratitude. That's my word for ethnic studies. Gratitude for today, gratitude for every single person who came today, but especially those who organized tonight's event. So I just want to give them a round of applause because they deserve it all. They deserve every bit of it. I'm going to go round of applause. You can tell I've taught every grade level. So gratitude is huge. It's huge, huge, huge. And I have so much of it, you know, like for just even being allowed to talk with you all. I feel like I couldn't pass the Pajaro Valley borders. I would get in trouble or something to talk to you all. But I feel very, very welcome here tonight. Okay, so I'm going to move forward. That was C1, everybody. C1. That was the cultural rituals and cultural energizer. Let's go to the next one. We're going to go into C2, critical concepts. And my belief is that many of you in the room know a lot of these concepts already, so I'm going to move fairly quickly, but if you have questions, do not feel bad to ask those questions as we go. So I'm just going to go, how did I get here? I think important that I, again, continue to infuse my story in this. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the person that you're going to see on the next slide. This person who's super angry. That's me, everybody. When I do the full speech, I actually tell students, I don't know this person, right? And I tell the whole story about who this person is. But I went to a school called American High School in Fremont, California, not too far from you all. And the school colors were red, white, and blue. Our mascot was American Eagle. You know, like we didn't have walls. It was such an interesting situation. But I also felt like I didn't have anything that I learned about that had anything to do with me. Like there was not one moment where we read anything by a Filipino. There was no time where I felt like my story was important. I felt ashamed to be Filipino, and I was angry, so I didn't do well in school. I graduated with a 1.83 GPA. You can go check. I graduated, though. Very, very key. But I have to remember when I look at this face, I'm going to look at this little girl that kind of comes up on the screen. She was a baby at some point. But I think my teachers forgot that I actually was a baby at some point. And then I went to school, and then this other little girl kind of comes up, and she has a little baon, what do they call this? Lunchbox. And that lunchbox smelled like fish and rice. So when it would open up, all the kids in a room like this, like a cafeteria, I would get teased. And so I started to really hate being Filipino. I see some Filipinos in the room, you can relate, right? Like, I wasn't really happy to be me. So then, don't press yet, Mahalaya. But then I end up becoming this angry high school student, right? Barely graduated. But then I get to this place called Alumni College. And I know we're on Alumni Parkway, so that was really, it meant something to kind of drive up Alumni Parkway, because I went to Alumni College, and that's where I took my first ethnic studies class from Ramon Quesada, the late Ramon Quesada. I realized that I was not the only one who he changed. And then I became someone who kind of looks like this. Serve the people. All day, every day. And sometimes that means losing a contract. Sometimes that means, like getting in trouble. Sometimes that means not getting a raise. Sometimes that means that I lose friends, because I'm going to speak up. And to me, this is really where I begin and where I end in the story of my relationship to ethnic studies. Eileen Pagtikan made these beautiful drawings. She was my student who would draw in class, and I was like, "Are you listening to me?" And then she would show me a picture of me. I was like, okay, I guess you were listening. And so this is my countercuento, or cuento means story. And I think important that you hear that, because my relationship to ethnic studies is not an academic one. It's one that's very, very personal. So these are the real pictures. Some are scary, I know. Look at my hair. So my dad, he was trying to teach me how to ride a bike, but I learned how to smoke cigarettes. And I don't smoke anymore, but that's my living story with my dad. I was a cheerleader, but I would only be a cheerleader up to basketball seasons because my grades would go down and I'd get kicked off the team. And then at some point, I picked up a different megaphone, and this is when I transferred from Ohlone to UC Berkeley, and I think I could call myself a student activist at that time. This was actually the No Grapes. I'm dating myself-ish, but No Grapes. We were fighting at the tail end of the No Grapes campaign. So this is Ramon Quesada. And he was the one who changed my life. He saw me. Not only was he teaching ethnic studies content, but he was such an amazing ethnic studies teacher because he was able to see me. He also saw that his curriculum was not reflective of me. So what he did was, one day after class, he goes, I need to talk to you, and I thought I was in trouble. And he goes, no, you're not in trouble, but let me give you this book, America's in the Heart. If you haven't read America's in the Heart, I encourage you to do that. It is the first book by a Filipino in the United States. And that book completely changed my life. I was like, I didn't know Filipinos wrote, right? One, I was also in denial that I was Filipino, and because he was Chicano and I loved that class, I was like, I'm Chicana, but that didn't stick very well. And so he was like, no, you're not. You need to read this book. So that book changed my life. We'll go to the next image. And then I became the poster child for Ohlone College. I know, and then they're like, yay, she can transfer, everyone can transfer. Another 25 years later, I'm dating myself. 25 years after this, I was the keynote speaker at the graduation where I was first blessed for the very, very first time by an Ohlone chief. And to me, there was something really key about being able to be blessed by someone who is indigenous to this land. And that's also what ethnic studies means to me. So we're gonna move forward. Then I became an activist at Berkeley and then fought for people's tenure and did some stuff. And this whole idea of faculty diversity, you'll see this little sign here on the right. I was like, oh, that's kind of like visionary for what I needed to become. And then eventually became at San Francisco State and then created this. And so if you're not familiar with my work, I created this pipeline or pathway called Pinay and Pinoy Educational Partnerships, PEP. Because no one was serving Filipinos in San Francisco. We needed to do it ourselves. And so we created a giant community. I don't have the current picture, but it is like another row of people that has grown from this. This is the current year. That's not a cumulative of the last 20 years of PEP. I have since retired from PEP, but I still visit and make sure I go to all their events. And then, now I'm going to say, well, how did we get here? These are my origin stories for ethnic studies or how I land in ethnic studies, but I want to talk a little bit about how we get here. Sometimes we think about getting here because policy says we have to. There's a requirement. The class of 2030 has to have an ethnic studies before they graduate high school. Sure, but that's not how we got here. We need to be mindful that ethnic studies comes from social movement. It comes from people fighting for ethnic studies. And so I want to kind of highlight that just a little bit. If you play that, it's not going to have sound, so I'm going to talk over it. Like this is what we saw. This kind of looks like what it looks like now when you're looking at the college campuses and the encampments and the police. And this is what was happening that led to ethnic studies. People fought for it. San Francisco State was not the first place. I think some people go, oh, everything is birthed from San Francisco State. And I feel like I'm at the Mecca. But in actuality, it starts from our communities. Ethnic studies starts in the multi-purpose room, just like this. It starts with people, with families, with students, and then organizations like Milpa and the different organizations that you all have. That's where ethnic studies actually started. They brought it to campus, and then campus goes, we need to have it institutionalized. And so students fought. Students who were teenagers were fighting for ethnic studies. It is the longest student strike. San Francisco State had the longest student strike still till this day, where they actually won ethnic studies. And you'll see it. The police were very much involved in that, but the students didn't give up because the students worked with faculty, they worked with community organizations, and there were other movements happening during this time, including the anti-war movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, the fight for the International Hotel in San Francisco. So there were other movements happening, but students were steadfast. They did not go to class for 5 months. And they were like, no, we want this. Some of them came back decades later to finish their degree, and I was actually lucky to be able to grant some of the degrees to those people who didn't get to finish in 1968 and 1969. If we go to the next slide, you'll actually see a little bit of data that shows, I think if you just, let's try, there we go. You'll see the 1968 strike. These slides will be available to you. I'm just going to take out my family, and then you can have the rest. But there are many organizations, and you can see the organizations. The Latin American Student Organization, Intercollegiate Chinese for Social Action, the Mexican American Student Confederation, the Philippines, or the Filipino American Collegiate Endeavor, the Native American Students Union, and the Asian American Political Alliance joins later. But look at the multiraciality of the coalition. That's important. And if you look around this room, that's what you're seeing as well. The goals were access, relevance, and community, this idea of an arc, that we wanted to make sure that the university was connected to the community. Ethnic studies is always used for that, by the way. At our campuses, and I have an amazing colleague here, Christine, knows that like we're often used as the diversity people too. Right? Like, so they always try to make sure that these things happen, but sometimes ethnic studies gets overwhelmed with all of that responsibility. You'll note here that ethnic studies is one of the only fields of study that students fought for. Did they fight for math? No. I love math. Okay, I don't. I lied to you. My mom loves math. I did not like math, but okay, anyways, let me not go that direction. But students fought for it. Very, very key. And students are so powerful. I'm just going to say right now, the movement that we're seeing on college campuses, high school campuses, it's inspiring. And that courage should also help us be more courageous. So, what is the whole purpose of ethnic studies? I'm just going to pop up a big text bomb, and we can talk through it a little bit later, is this idea of collective liberation. This idea of collective liberation is key, because I think sometimes people want to think about ethnic studies and think about it as something that is hateful, and actually it is not. Ethnic studies is so much about collective liberation. So we also think about liberation of all people of color, but it's beyond that. It's also about the intersections that we have with other communities. You know, like how key that is in terms of gender, sexuality, but then also our Jewish brothers and sisters. We are about collective liberation. That is very, very key. So I'm going to put that up here in a definition for you all. It's going to be a text bomb. There we go. It's the freeing of all people from oppression. All people. Yeah? That's key. That doesn't mean necessarily that we study every single person in ethnic studies, but the goal is collective liberation. So I'm going to go a little bit further and say that ethnic studies is the fight is inside the classroom and outside the classroom. Ethnic studies has always been inside and outside of the classroom. And we're seeing that more and more even here today. So ethnic studies is really about creating safe and brave spaces. In academic spaces, this is the definition that we used at SF State for a really long time. But it really is about centering the native peoples, the way they would describe it at SF State is native peoples or indigenous peoples, and communities of color in the US in the first person, that we get to tell our stories. That's ethnic studies. The second piece of that is that ethnic studies is about eliminating racism. Bottom line. If it's not doing either of those things, honestly, it's not really ethnic studies. It's got to be about telling the stories of people of color in the first person, and it has to be about eliminating racism and other forms of oppression. And if it's not doing that, it's not ethnic studies. Okay, so a little bit more about ethnic studies. These are some values. These are some really important values of ethnic studies. Collective liberation and freedom, self-determination and sovereignty. Sovereignty is when you can actually, rule yourself. Critical consciousness and decolonization. Humanization. I'm kind of just reading these words so we can hear them out loud. Some of them may be new to us, and that's okay. That means it's time to look them up, right? It's time to have conversation about them. Humanization. Self and community actualization. Solidarity. Solidarity, unity, and empathy. Wellness and wholeness. Hope, love, respect, and joy. That's what ethnic studies is supposed to be about. So why does ethnic studies matter? You might already know this. And you're going to see my nephew on the screen. Ethnic studies matters because, and we have data on all of this, that it creates higher critical thinking and positive democracy outcomes for all students. All students. Students of color, white students, right? They are all learning to be more critically thinkers, or they're learning to be more critical at thinking, but then they're also creating positive democracy outcomes. We're seeing that more and more. The students who are leading all the kinds of movements have all taken ethnic studies classes, which is phenomenal. It's also about, it really creates this notion of better self-esteem, where students, when they have a reflective, relevant, and responsive education, they have higher self-esteem, self-concept, self-determination, mental wellness, civic and community engagement, commitment to cultural perpetuity, empathy, and leadership. I'm just going to note that most of these are my students who are doing this at the master and PhD level, where they're studying the impact of ethnic studies, not just in high school, but then at the college level as well. And also elementary. I know we're here talking about high school, but it's impacting the youngest. My daughter got to take ethnic studies from her kindergarten year. When they say, oh, ethnic studies is too hard for freshmen, I'm like, no, my child took it at kindergarten. So I think it's very possible. And then ethnic studies also impacts teacher development. And so these things are really key, where teachers actually get to grow in these spaces as well, where they become critically conscious. And honestly, they treat students better when they've had ethnic studies training. So now I'm going to talk about PVUSD to kind of close us out. And I need a little bit of help. I don't know if anybody wants to help me, but I have the Fields framework both in English and in Spanish. And so I just want to thank PVUSD for bringing the Spanish version. Thank you, Claudia, for doing that on the spot. So we have both the English and the Spanish. So if you need a Spanish version, please raise your hand so that we can come and give that one. And I'll give the ones that have the graphic are English, and the ones that don't have are Spanish. Okay. Are we ready for this? So I really had no idea that I was not going to get renewed in Pajaro Valley, so I went to work. Do you know what I mean? You know how you think ahead, you're like, oh, I'm going to get this all done so that we're ready for the school year. And to be honest, I spent some of my summer getting ready for the fall. And I was excited to be with this set of teachers, because there was a new set of teachers coming in, and it was going to be our last year. So we were really trying to set up the teachers and the administrators to take it on. I mean, we could always be partners, but our goal is not to stay in a district forever and have dependency on consultants. Our goal was to get everything set up, put the seeds in, and then just be in conversation as we move forward in the world, right? So we spent the summer thinking about all of this, including I hired a graphic person who was a student of mine, who is now a teacher, to do this beautiful graphic, and you'll see it if you get the one that has the picture. Can you put that up there like that? That one, yeah. It's beautiful, and it has the fields framework on it, and you will see representation of different people in Pajaro Valley. Her name is Katie Kwan. She's doing some workshops tomorrow online if you want to come and see her workshops. She's at Real Soul. So ethnic studies in PVUSD is really about an honoring of locality, an honoring of context, an honoring of the field workers here in Pajaro Valley. And this, again, is rooted in our family and the many generations of people who have served all of us, to be quite honest. Including the food that we have here today, including, like the ground that we're on. I mean, all of it is related to our field workers. So you'll see here, and if you press one more time, Laya, it'll have a graphic, the graphic that you have here. So this concept is really an honoring and an ode, to our ancestors of this land, who have done the work, who have fed us and cared for us, and their labor, quite literally, is the labor that has fed who we became here today. It also honors the indigenous people of this land and the communities of color. And finally, we are centered in the curriculum. Finally. So this framework was created in collaboration with PVUSD, along with myself and CRE. And this graphic was created by Katie Kwan from Real Soul. So I'm starting to get irritated with my voice, so I'm gonna ask a student to read this. Does anyone wanna come up and read this? Vision. Thank you, come on up.
Hello, everyone. Okay. The vision of ethnic studies in Pajaro Valley Unified School District. Hilda. I'm Hilda Gazanfari, by the way. I'm from PV High School, sorry. Vision. The vision of ethnic studies in Pajaro Valley Unified School District is to provide rich learning that centers experiences, stories, and knowledge of ethnic studies groups, while also shaping a lens to understand and critique dominant powers structures, ultimately eliminating racism and intersectional forms of operation. Ethnic studies will provide a cultural and community responsive education that values FIELDS fields in and of Pajaro Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilda, for doing that. I always try to pause to make sure you know who's up here. So Hilda, thank you for introducing yourself as well. So you'll notice that this vision, has some similar things to the definition of ethnic studies that we talked about earlier, eliminating racism, really centering the local stories of people of color, indigenous people. So now we're gonna go into the fields, and I'm gonna not spend a ton of time here because now you have the handout, but we're gonna go over what fields stands for. But if you look at the fields handout, you'll notice it has fields, and then it has student outcomes, and then it also has the pedagogical commitments of the adults who are working with young people. So if we go to this next one, you'll see here, you'll see this is what you got, right? Did everyone get this? Okay, cool. And so I will then solicit one more student to come and read what each of these fields are. Anybody want to do that? I knew you were going to come. I felt Max coming up.
Yeah, my name is Maximiano Barras Hernandez, and I'm also a student at PV. So, freedom, centering Pajaro Valley, especially the voices of indigenous peoples and communities of colors and their fight for freedom. Identity, living freely to be and transforms one's identity while respecting the freedom of all relations. Empathy, empathizing that leads to connection along with personal and social responsibility. Literacy, reading the world and the word through a system literacy that fosters a critical lens, dreams, imagining a world rid of racism and intersectional forms of oppression that centers the well-being, joy, and dreams of all. And finally, solidarity. Showing solidarity to support the actualization of all people in Pajaro Valley and beyond.
That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. So the fields, and I want to also, I'm going to keep shouting you out, Claudia, because this was, when we were writing it, we were emotional about it because we knew that it was powerful and we knew we were centering good things. And so when Claudia shared it, and I was really happy to see it on this, the screen, when this was coupled with the accusations of anti-Semitism toward me, I was like, wow, we missed this, the opportunity to celebrate this because the focus was on me being defamed. And so I just want to note that I'm coming in good spirits today, and I'm just so thankful that we have the opportunity to actually present it with fidelity, with students' voices. And I want you to look at this document, and I want you to tell me if you see anti-Semitism or any kind of hate, because if we do see that, then we need to make adjustments. And I really do appreciate the love and care that went into this, but then also that went into this beautiful thing tonight. And so if there's anything you want to ask me, I'll be here for the rest of the night, and then I'm going to kind of allow, our folks to come back and share this with us. But I'm going to teach one last thing. Is that okay? One last thing? So we learned isang bagsak. Isang bagsak. Okay, that was really a... One more time. Isang bagsak. A little better. Okay, we're going to do a preface to Isang Bagsak, and then we're going to do a clap that was done here by the United Farm Workers in Pajaro Valley, in Davenport, in Watsonville. And it's the unity clap, and it's, y'all know the unity clap? It's the slow one that goes really fast, crescendos. And then I'm going to yell Isang Bagsak at the end, and then we'll clap. So, like that, Isang Bagsak. Okay, ready? Are we ready? Okay, let's go. Isang bagsak. Feel that. Very different, right? So there was this local clap that you felt in your heartbeat, and then Isang bagsak brings you to the more global and diasporic movement. So thank you so, so much, everybody.
Once again, Dr. Allyson Tintiangco-Cubales. Thank you for taking the time to come and speak with us. Before we introduce our next speakers, Lourdes and I are going to share a couple of anecdotes that stress the importance of administrators being trained to support a topic as potentially challenging as ethnic studies in the right way.
So at the last board meeting, I found out that the students at PV High missed out on an opportunity because the principal didn't understand it. So there's a thing called the Barrio Bus that Dr. Alberto Pulido created down in San Diego as a way to bring culture and other things to the community. So he brought this bus up here and asked, if the high school students could participate. Aptos High said yes, Watsonville High said yes, PV High principal said no. So I asked him, because I didn't know about this until somebody mentioned it at the last board meeting, and I asked him, I said, why didn't they, what happened? Why did you say no? And he said, because I thought it wasn't good use of our instructional time. And I thought, what do you mean it wasn't good use? And he said, well, I didn't find any value in it. And this is why CRE is important. This is why I wonder if he had been trained in this, would he have thought the same thing, or would he have learned like there is value in this? So basically, what the the lesson that came with the Barrio Bus was the kids were going to learn about lowrider culture. So when you heard that, he just assumed, oh, they're going to look at cars. He really didn't understand that the lowrider culture was actually a way of expressing for the Chicano Latino community to express themselves in a way that made them feel this is mine, right? Because at that time, this started around the 1950s. At that time, there was a lot of deportations, there was a lot of discrimination. This was something that brought them together. He had no idea about that. And so he just assumed it was, you know what, they're going to watch a video. Why are the students going to waste their time? And so this is why this last year would have been critical, because administrators needed to understand that. He had no idea what the significance was, what the history was, or the value of it. And because of that, the students of PV lost on that opportunity.
Some of you may have seen a video of an unfortunate interaction between a teacher at Altos High School and some students in an ethnic studies class. The teacher expressed frustration at the resistance of some of the students to the topics being discussed. And the interaction was not conducive to a positive teaching and learning experience. The issue with the situation was that the teacher had spoken out at the board meeting, begging the board to bring back the CRE contract. She told the board that she was not receiving the support that she had been promised. Being that teacher's first year teaching ethnic studies and not having the training or trained administrators at the school who could have supported her to help resolve the challenges, the board and the school district failed those students, and they failed that young teacher. This is why the CRE contract needs to be completed. With that, I'm going to introduce 3 PVUSD students and a teacher to share their experiences with ethnic studies. First up is Maximiliano Barraza, a 9th grade student at Pajaro Valley High School.
So my second introduction, welcome everyone. I'm Maximiliano Barraza Hernandez, and I'm a freshman at Pajaro Valley High School. So this school year has been a journey for me. This was my first year being in ethnic and literature studies, and my entire world changed the moment I stepped into that classroom. I gained another perspective, another window into the world. It sparked a curiosity that led me to meet a ton of wonderful people. My worldview has shifted dramatically since the start of the school year. I already knew a little bit about the oppression that minorities faced, but little did I know that the knowledge I held was just at the tip of the iceberg. If I had chosen English honors like I had originally intended to, I would be an entirely different person. Ethnic and literature studies is the reason I'm speaking to you today, and the reason I intend to stay involved in politics and stay involved in my community. Ethnic studies is very important to me, but I can't help thinking about how lucky I am to have a teacher that is trained and can give me the information I need to deconstruct the systems of power and oppression in our modern society. There are many false ideas and bad information about what real ethnic studies is about. If I had an untrained teacher, maybe I would have the false understanding that ethnic studies is only about ethnicity, or as conservatives like to say, about oppressors and victims. And I would have missed out on learning what's really happening in our world. Maybe I wouldn't be here today, or I wouldn't be involved with my community at all. This is why I've been an advocate for the renewal of the CRE contract. I want people to have the informative and eye-opening experience of finding out why people live the way they do, why people act the way they do, why there are underclasses, and what we can do to help. We need to raise community awareness and create more young leaders. PVUSD has had moments where the community had to step up to hold authority figures accountable. One big example that comes to mind is when Trustee Acosta fired Dr. Michelle Rodriguez with no warning, secretly and illegally. The community responded by extending the meeting an additional 5 hours, forcing the board to retract their action. That's people power. That's how we can create change and help each other. Ethnic studies is the tool we need to help raise awareness in our community, teach people, and give them a reason to care. We need people that are informed and will act when push comes to shove. But how can we do that if we don't teach them or give them a reason to care? With all that is going on in the world around us, it is evident that there are people who hold positions of power that will do whatever they can to hold on to that power for their own benefit. They will use whatever tools they have to keep people ignorant and paralyzed. Ethnic studies is a framework that challenges that and works to uplift communities and give power to the people rather than keep it in the hands of a few. When we all have the ability to make the best choices for ourselves and each other without seeking to have more than anyone else, the world is a better place. That is why I will always support ethnic studies, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Yeah. Next up, we have Miguel Martinez. Miguel is a 12th grade student at Watsonville High School. Uh-oh.
I want to start with the question. Well, sorry, I hope you don't mind me moving. I just can't stay in a place. I want to start with a quick question. How many here understand or speak Spanish? Please, hands up. Oh, great, marvelous. You know, probably I'll make you, Sergio, you're the choosing, you're going to translate. I'll be as brief as possible. Miren, la pregunta fue solo una excusa. Así como CRE, debo confesar, ha sido una excusa. Yo nací, ¿cuántos? Levante la mano. ¿Quién ha nacido en Watsonville? Condado de Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz County, who was born here? Miren, a pesar de haber nacido aquí, yo no fui criado aquí. Como ven, incluso hablo español. ¿No? Y ha sido muy complicado adaptarme a Watsonville. Yo creo firmemente que Watsonville no es todo lo que es México. ¿Estamos de acuerdo? Porque además somos mayoritariamente hispanos. Y si algo realmente le reclamo a esta ciudad, tal vez alguien aquí puede identificarse, es que la gente no se compromete. Hay problemas y ¿qué hacemos? Nada. Dices en el salón, hay problemas, bueno, hay que protestar, hay que hacer algo, y la gente, nada. Y si algo me ha traído este proyecto, ha sido esperanza. Realmente es un poco desilusionante, porque sé que hay miembros del board. Yo quiero entender cómo votas algo que por primera vez trae esperanza. En mi vida yo jamás habría esperado ver gente de Watsonville aquí. Es más, esta noche estamos en Watsonville, estamos discutiendo un tema que nos compete, y ¿cuántos de aquí ven? No hay compromiso, ¿cierto? ¿No es realmente desilusionante? ¿Por qué dejamos que otra gente tome las decisiones? Ethnic Studies es solo una excusa. El programa puede ir, puede volver, eventualmente volverá a salir, pero es solo una excusa. Lo que realmente importa somos nosotros. Es tomar las riendas, es decir, Watsonville es nuestro. ¿O vamos a dejar que otro tome las riendas de esto? Yo pensé que iban a decir que no. No, claro que no, Watsonville es nuestro. Cada uno de ustedes, mire al que tiene a usted a la derecha, el que tiene al lado. Look at who's next to you. Right? That's Watsonville. Esa es la gente que hace que valga la pena este lugar. Y realmente quiero decirles algo, todos ustedes realmente me inspiran. No saben lo deprimente que es llegar a un lugar como Watsonville, donde la gente no pone de su parte y que por primera vez estén todos unidos. Quiero agradecerle públicamente, aunque sé que no me va a entender, a ese hombre de ahí. Ese tipo es una maravilla. Cuando lo conocí, después le dicen, cuando yo lo conocí lo subestimé, dije, bueno, además hablaba un poco raro, dije yo, es un señor enojón, ¿qué va? Este tipo es una maravilla. Es por él que hoy estoy aquí. Es por él que yo sé que muchos de aquí están aquí. Mr. Pels, you're great. I'm just saying, sorry, I'm gonna need to translate. This is a moment. When I first met him, I was like, oh, is he a grumpy old guy or what? I was like, I don't know. That person is simply marvelous. He has changed my life. He has gave me hope in something. He has given me hope in Watsonville. I mean, this is not only about the CRE contract. It's about us. It's about Watsonville. It's about taking the rents of our own history. You know, I've done this in the last board meeting I attended, but I want to recreate it because I want to yell with you all the name of the city that makes all this worth it. Watsonville, at the count of 3. 3, 2. We're going to say Watsonville, okay? 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much.
And last but not least, Ishel Barraza is an 8th grade student going to PV High School next year.
Hello, I'm very glad to see you all here tonight. My name is Ishel. I'm an 8th grader at Rolling Hills. Ethnic studies is very important to me because I will be taking ethnic studies next year, and I want to have the best and most accurate idea of how the world works. As a Latina growing up in Watsonville, where most of the people are Latinos or people of color, I've noticed that our voices and our community as a whole don't seem to matter to the people in charge. Ever since January, my family and I have consistently been going to board meetings trying to get the CRE contract back. It doesn't feel right that the voices of 2 white people who don't even have kids in the district are much more valued by our school board than our own voices. If ethnic studies is never taught at school, many students won't be informed about how power structures negatively affect their lives. Many students won't know their culture's histories. I believe it's important for the community to be informed about their history, the struggles they have had to deal with as a result of oppression, and the power structures that keep them oppressed. Most people have some idea that a few very rich people hold much of the power in society, but because they are struggling to survive, they are not able to realize how culture, identities like gender and economics is used to keep them from achieving their equal rights. It is important that we continue to fight for ethnic studies so that our youth can be in a better place. Furthermore, studies have shown that students who take ethnic study courses perform better academically, are more likely to finish college, and are more likely to be involved in the community. I hope that you will join us in this fight.
And finally, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Robert Pelt, an ethnic studies teacher. Mr. Peltz is an ethnic studies teacher at Watsonville High School who has dedicated the entire school year 2023-2024 to attending every board meeting to fight for the renewal of the CRE contract, putting community action into practice for his students and PVUSD.
Hey everybody, to answer these 2 questions, I decided I'd like to tell a story. I tell this story all the time when people ask me about ethnic studies. Earlier this year, I was sitting in my classroom talking with a student of mine, as we normally do, and he said to me, "Mr. Peltz, we watched this movie in our history class today, and I think I'm the kid in the movie." And I said, "What movie? What kid? Tell me more." And he said, he watched this film in another class called Precious Knowledge. And there was a kid in the film that started out in the film not caring that much about school. But by the end of the film, something changed and he began to care. He told me that he felt like that was his story. Well, Precious Knowledge is a documentary about a Mexican-American studies program for high school students that was started at Tucson High School in 1998. It was an ethnic studies program. And the kid he was referencing was representative of many of the kids in the film. Kids that started out disengaged from school but became totally engaged as part of this program. The comparison is spot on. As a sophomore, and I say this with a smile, he was absolutely the worst. I really had a hard time with him. But I had him again as a junior, and something was different. He still had bad habits, but he was starting to engage. Now as a senior, he's one of my favorite kids. I can see that he cares deeply about what we are learning. He remembers the material, and we talk about it outside of class. And best of all, he now sees himself going to college. In our conversation, he said to me, I used to not care about school, but since I took ethnic studies, it changed my thinking. This student is my answer to why ethnic studies is important to me and why this fight is so important to this community. He is the transformative power of ethnic studies. It helps students analyze and understand the world they live in. It encourages them to have pride in who they are and where they come from. And it re-engages kids that had long ago given up. Imagine what this could do for an entire community. I mean, look what we've already done. Thank you all for being here tonight. This is very, very special. Thank you.
We've also invited some community members to come speak. And because this isn't just about school, this is also about the community. And so I want to introduce Omar Dienguez from Barrios Unidos. Santa Cruz Barrios Unidos set out to heal the communities to build sustainable peace and end interpersonal, community, and structural violence. For 40 years, Barrios Unidos has provided culturally driven and spiritually informed services to youth and adults within our most marginalized communities. I would like to introduce Omar, who works at Barrios Unidos and was also a PVUSD student. And he's going to speak to you about some of the struggles he overcame while a student here in the district.
Hi. My name is Omar Dieguez. I went to Aptos High School 20 plus years ago, where we were the first wave of students that was bused from Watsonville to Aptos High for overcrowding, where we had to deal with segregation. We also had to fight for. There was a lot of stuff going on in Aptos that the community wasn't happy about. They said we were lowering the quality of education. We were bringing gangs to Aptos, and there were just a lot of opposing people that didn't want us over at Aptos High School. So, Cultura heritage is important. Empowering the students with knowledge gives them pride and promotes unity. So what happened at Aptos High School, back in those days when we were bused to Aptos High School, there was Proposition 187, which took rights from migrant students and immigrants, which were school, and also medical benefits and stuff like that. It took education, medical rights away from migrants. This is what inspired us to make change at Aptos High School for equality to all, and we organized the Raza. We stood up for our rights. We believed in the power of the students, unity, education, and knowledge. Students' voice is so powerful, more powerful than the person in the struggles, than other persons in the struggles. You are the generation that is suffering from all, so your voice is very powerful. What inspired us to make that change was this Proposition 187, and that gave us the inspiration to organize and to bring change to our school. So through that, we decided that we were going to empower our students through knowledge and learning the process and how we can make changes at Aptos High School. What we did was we ran for student body. We had all Latinos go run for student body president, vice president, treasurer, all the positions, and we ended up taking up all the positions that year, except for one. I myself captured the student body president, and we started making changes in Aptos High School. The student body was all mostly people we could not identify with, or people who we could not relate with at all. So we organized to have people run for the leadership to help make changes and give us all a voice. The strategy: organize peace and unity events, cleanup days, music at lunch, encourage all students to engage, talent shows, school clubs, being proactive before the elections. We were already doing things before we got elected into ASB. So we were organizing by doing unity walks and just bringing different activities for the students to engage in Aptos. We also fought for Chicano studies. When we brought the Chicano studies issue to the school, we also educated ourselves on the process of on how to go about that. And when we presented everything to the administration and to the school board and our voice wasn't heard, we organized walkouts. And we used the media to communicate what we wanted also. Our whole struggle was well documented in the newspapers, and there was letters from us to express ourselves. There's letters from the school board being put up. There was walkouts, protests. There was a lot of organization. And I gotta say this right now: most of the battle that we were facing at Aptos High School was not between the students. It was between the migrant students and the parents. So it was not only a battle that we had to face, it was, on top of that, we had to face the battle with the administration and how they treated us. One thing that I left out is when I was elected student body president, 3 weeks after I got elected student body president, I was accused of being in a drive-by shooting by the principal, which became a big issue, and we were able to organize and fight back and have the principal offer an apology for that, because that was very important that he did that. And I hate to say this, but it was a battle that we had to face as far as racism and hate, because we were not welcomed at Aptos High School. We were not welcomed at all. We were constantly in the newspaper. We brought Mecha to Aptos High School. We started that movement. We brought Chicano studies. We did unity between the gangs on campus. We, with the support of the Brown Berets, we did a lot of events, peace and unity events. Our voice was, we would hit up the school board meetings a lot and voice our opinion on subjects that were affecting us. And we demanded the change. These are all newspaper clippings from that struggle. Principal offers apology. And then just more student leader was deposed. That I was impeached for my position, accused of other things. And through organization between the students, we were able to organize, and I was able to get my student body president position back. The struggle was, I was accused of being in a stabbing, and it was put up in the newspaper, big articles, and this was something that was very demoralizing, and I went into a deep depression because of this, and I kind of lost the fight, the thrive to keep on going, but here I am again, back at it, and it's inspiring to see the students today that they're still fighting for the same thing that we were fighting 20 plus years ago. And I commend the students for doing that, because your voice is very important in this battle. This battle is, whatever battle you guys are gonna fight is gonna be won by the students, not by the parents, not by the administration, by the students, because your voice is very important to be heard. Your voice is the one that counts in everything that you guys do. So it's important that you guys keep on fighting and be consistent with what you guys do. So again, leader or loser, front page, and when all these accusations were put up, they took enough real estate to put these accusations up, but when they were not true, they took 2 sentences to say it was not true. So Watsonville has such a rich history of struggles and overcoming those struggles. We would be wrong to not teach and preserve our struggles. I just want to close out with this little letter right here, and it's called Si Se Puede. Looking back at what has happened in the Aptos High School, I, as a Chicano activist, cannot keep quiet. Sometimes people will conform to the popular opinion and adhere to prescribed social patterns because they want to be accepted. Racism is secure with Chicano leaders. Parents and professionals choose to be silent because if they speak out, they're going to be labeled as radicals and communists. We've been called many names because we fought the injustices and we have experience. When people live in harmony, celebrating their differences rather than them to eliminate and isolate, America becomes stronger and growth can take place without discriminatory violence and acts of hate. When our young sons and daughters were bused to Aptos High School, they did not want to go there. These past 5 years, our young Chicanos have suffered and have been discriminated against by some of the Aptos administration. Why? Because Chicano students' culture, language, and dress were different. They were labeled as gang members, troublemakers, and tensions started to build up. The administration did not know how to cope with the new group. Many were expelled. The dropout rate was astonishing. I see the consequences now. Where many of the young people they could have helped with the proper guidance and understanding. It was hard for the first Chicano student body president, Omar Dieguez, to be accused by ex-principal Severson to be involved in a gang and drive-by shooting. Many Chicano youth lose their faith in the system and respond angrily or suspiciously toward even those that legitimately want to help. Kids are angry and frustrated. Let's work together to make Aptos High an example of this state that young people, no matter what their color or background, can live and study together. Si se puede. It can be done. Tomás Alejo. And this just goes to show the battles that we were fighting back in those days. You know, it was a serious battle, and we're fighting those today still. It's very mind-boggling to know that we're still fighting those battles. But I commend all the students, and I give you more power, and I just want you guys to know that I myself, all these teachers you see here, and all these community members that are here, we're here to support you in everything you guys do and keep fighting.
Next up, we're going to have some speakers from Milpa. Milpa developed as a community organization led by formerly incarcerated people and the people impacted by that incarceral system as a way of healing and breaking the cycle of incarceration and building community through cultural awareness and organizing. Elias Gonzalez is the training and site manager for Milpa. Karina Moreno and Bernie Gomez are program and leadership coordinators. They will be speaking on the link between ethnic studies and community activism for issues beyond that are still affecting PVUSD, like the school to prison pipeline and the abnormally high rate of suspension, and how our money is allocated and how equality is achieved or not within the district.
Hey, buenas tardes. Well, that's a lot to talk about in a little bit of minutes, so kind of just bear with us. You know, we're just kind of going to run through a little bit of what Milpa is, and I think it's in our vision and our mission, right, that it's kind of self-explanatory, a lot of those things, and then we'll just kind of share a little bit. So I have my little papers, try to stay on track, because I like to go on a good one. I like to, like, go way out there, you know, and talk, you know, just like I'm doing right now where you haven't even started, you know what I'm saying? Like, so my name is Bernie Gomez, right? I am the program and leadership coordinator at Milpa, right? And I do want to just first and foremost say gracias and send a lot of gratitude to all those that were involved in organizing this, right? I won't say names, right? Because then I'll probably get in trouble for not saying everybody, but just another round of applause for them, please. And Karina.
I also want to just take a second too to thank and acknowledge every single person who took time out of their Monday afternoon to come and be a part of this and you know, be curious and being willing to learn, and you know, appreciate that very much. Pero con eso, buenas noches. My name is Karina Moreno, and I am also a program and leadership coordinator at MILPA. And MILPA is three things. We're a community-based organization, it's a philosophy, and it's also an acronym, which stands for Motivating Individual Leadership for Public Advancement. And our mission here is to cultivate change makers for the next 7 generations by creating opportunities for cultural healing, intergenerational leadership, and empowerment through community-driven decision-making for healthier communities. And we do that too with the vision so that the next 7 generations are culturally rooted with pathways to be successful and live oppression-free. Very similar to like what Allyson mentioned, you know, being able to stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, but also making sure that we're looking 7 generations forward too, so that we're leaving this Watsonville, right, or wherever we call home, a better place. Which leads into our North Stars, which are to build community people power, como dijo Max too. But it looks exactly like this is how it starts, which then leads to dismantling the school to prison pipeline, ending mass incarceration, which takes a whole community. No one person can do it alone, and no one person should feel like they have to.
Yeah, and you know, we like to use a framework of organize, mobilize, and decolonize, right? We want to organize, just like it's happening right now, but for us, we gotta start organizing within ourselves first, right? We wanna be organized in our heart, organized in the way we think, right? Because this is gonna involve people. And people bring a lot of different characteristics, a lot of energy, different energies, right? There's gonna be time of funk, you know, it's like kind of like we're seeing a lot of pushback, you know, but we have to be good. We have to be centered. We have to be rooted, right? Because this is not just a right now thing, you know. We've been seeing it. We've been seeing it for historically. It's been impacting us, you know. So we're here for the long run, you know. So that's the whole part of organizing, right? We gotta organize, build relationships, get to know one another. You know, we gotta do that hard work before we do that hard work. You know what I'm saying? Because we see it sometimes, you know, it's like people get involved, you know, because it's the hot thing to do. And the next thing that happens, where's the support at? You know, you leave people, organizations, advocates, you know, families alone, you know. So, and the other thing is mobilizing, right? We need to mobilize to create the change that we want to see, the change that we're seeking, right? It's a lot of work. It's a dedication. It's a lot of time. People have jobs, you know. People, you know, and a lot of this stuff is after hours, you know, burning that midnight oil, right? So.
And we also talk about decolonizing, right? And what we mean by that too is being able to lead from a place where we're coming with spirit, right? With our cultural values, with relationships, knowing each other too. We're not just yelling into a void. And also, you know, leading from a place that leads to anger or apathy. Because we know that these spaces that we enter were not designed for us. And we're up against hundreds of years of design in these systems, right? So what does it look like to decolonize, to come in with relationships as a community, you know, con esperanza, como dijo Miguel, with hope, you know, like Miguel said. What does it look like to find joy in this, that we all bring something to the table and we all care about what it is that we're going at together, right? Because it starts with ethnic studies, I hope, but then what does it look like when we talk about taking police off campuses and putting trees on campuses, you know? Because, I mean, trees improve mental health. Trees reduce violence, right? And what does it look like to have food sovereignty or you know, healthy foods that are growing in the farms in all of the cafeterias? What does it look like for PV High School to have a theater? You know, I've heard that one a few times. You know, and what does that look like? You know, these are things that we can all come together and talk about, and it starts exactly like how we're doing here. This is what we talk about when we talk about building community people power.
Yeah, thank you, Karina, for mentioning building community power, right? Um, you know, ethnic studies is something that's happening right now. You know, not say, when we get the CRE contract voted back in, right? There's still a lot that's going on. You know what I'm saying? We have, like Karina mentioned, right? There's an SRO contract. I believe it's 1.2 million, give or take, something like that, partnered with the mental health clinician, right, in our schools, right? We need to change that, right? We can't have ethnic studies in our schools while we're being policed in our schools as well, right? But if you start thinking about the community as well, right, our homes, right, your kids' homes, right? We're also seeing the disparities in the way the city, the county is allocating resources, right? Watsonville, South County is very segregated, right? 83% of it is brown, colored, right? 71% is living under that poverty line. That means 71% of us are poor, you know? We're struggling. So we need to change that, but I can't do it alone. Karina can't do it alone. You know what I'm saying? There's many things happening at the county, right? Quick statistics, just real quick. Corrections department, $46 million for the jail. And there's 346 folks struggling that are locked up right now, right? But think about those numbers. $46 million to house 346 people, right? And about 7% of that population is in there for serious crime, right? Serious violations still going, you know, to all that. But data is telling us, right, that the majority of the people that are locked up, right, about between 50 or 70 percent of that population is struggling with homelessness, is struggling with substance use disorder, and with some type of mental behavioral health condition, right? The same CEOs have stated, you know, that Santa Cruz County has become a de facto mental health institution, right? The civil grand jury has stated that there is no infrastructure or resources to address that, you know? So what's the next best thing is to lock them up? You know what I'm saying? That's what we're seeing. And that's our family members. That's what we see when we're driving down the street. Sometimes we see some people struggling and stuff, you know? And I say all this just to say that there is a lot, and not just that, that's just the stuff that part of ending mass incarceration that is very dear to me because I'm formerly incarcerated and stuff, and I know the impacts of that. So the last thing I want to say though, go ahead.
I just want to say too that everything that I mentioned, the possibilities of having all of these things and advocating as a community, these are things that local groups and organizations and people are already advocating for. I didn't make them up. And so I invite you, you know, to reach out. Let's have a plática. Let's talk about, and how do we build a community around this?
Last thing, I'm gonna throw a shameless plug because it's happening on Friday. There is a PVUSD suspension rate presentation that we're holding at our office, at Milpa office, right? And this is information that our movement partners have flagged for us, you know, and they're gonna do us the honor of providing this presentation and these numbers and kind of see what's happening, right? What's going on in our district. And there is a connection, you know, between the ethnic studies, suspensions, right, overcriminalization and policing. So we do have some information on it if you're interested, right? But I think this is how we continue to build power, you know, developing critical analysis and consciousness of what's going on. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a shorty, even with the heels. So we're starting to come to the end of our program, and we wanted to have the last few minutes to just give it back to the audience and ask questions, anything that's been lingering over, stuff that you heard, or questions that you have. So if anybody has a question for either any of the speakers, this is the time to ask. We have a few minutes before we close up.
So I guess what we're going to do is, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and we could come out to you and bring the microphone, ask questions of the speakers or about what next steps are. And so if who's the first brave one to go?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. I think it's great to see all these great faces and enthusiasm for ethnic studies. I'm a teacher at Cabrillo College, and I want to tell you that we have an ethnic studies program. We've hired an ethnic studies full-time tenured faculty person, and this is going on in all 113 community colleges right now. So another argument that could be made at the high school level is that you need the program. Obviously, it's the law. You need the program to abide the law, but you also need the program because your students are coming to us at Cabrillo. And it'll be a great thing if we're not the first persons that deliver the history that needs to be getting to them as young as high school. And that's even too late.
Okay, does anybody else have a question or a comment that they want to make? Oh.
Thank you. I guess, the charges against the program were about anti-Semitism, and yet so far I haven't seen what exactly is anti-Semitic about this curriculum. Is there a specific passage that people are concerned about in the curriculum? Can anyone address that, or is it, what is the actual content that's controversial?
So we're going to turn this one over to Christine. If you're
There's nothing anti-Semitic about this. There's no evidence of anti-Semitism whatsoever. And the charge that was made was about Allyson was the co-chair of an advisory council appointed by the California Department of Education because of her expertise and to develop an ethnic studies model curriculum that would serve the entire state. And so what was the sin of anti-Semitism that characterized the first draft? And it was open for community comment. It's that it dared to include mention of Palestine, the fact that Palestine is occupied, the fact that the system, there's a racist system of apartheid, and it mentioned BDS. And for the sin of mentioning that, Allyson has been resoundingly smeared as an anti-Semite. And I will say that the board did not investigate this. There was no going to classrooms to teachers to see if indeed there was anti-Semitic content of any kind, unfolding in the classrooms that were following the Fields framework. So this is another trumped up charge. It's a weaponization of anti-Semitism that ultimately harms the community. And this is the ironic thing too. Allyson's educational consulting firm is called Community Responsive Education. People like Bobby, the Barazas, some of us have been going on a very regular basis to the school board meetings. And it's so striking how what's been cut out is community responsive education and how the school board doesn't respond to the community.
And just to add to that, that was one of the main reasons why we wanted to have this town hall, so that you can see for yourself there was nothing anti-Semitic that's being taught. You have the Fields outline, you have that, you can see for yourself. There's nothing. And so that's one of the reasons that we're upset that we have this renowned academic, You know, I mean, if you look her up, you'll see, oh my gosh, it was just the first time I heard of her, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much that she's written. She's an expert in the field. Why would we not want the cream of the crop teaching our kids? I don't understand that.
Dr. Allyson, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Hola, everybody. My name is Gabriel Medina. You know, I grew up in District 3, and I was having a conversation with my mom, and the one thing that came up for us is we've never had sidewalks where we grew up. Not ever in my entire time growing up there. We've had our representative come one time, and he left because he got scared because he couldn't take the frustration that the people were launching at him because he never showed up. So I think we do have leverage with this seat that's coming up. Cabrillo is a Hispanic Serving Institute. If they want our students, they should be providing them the classes that our students want. That's what this person needs to do who's gonna be in this seat. They also need to go over to District 3 in the county and say, we need sidewalks. Our students are here, so you should be giving us these sidewalks. So there's a lot of power, and don't let these people who sit in those seats who stay silent, that's not what we want. We need artists. We need people who are inventive, that can think differently. This generation, and let me tell you this, based on my studies, based on the research that I'm doing, these students are so decentralized in the sense that they have so much more access than many of us did growing up. I'm a millennial, so I had access. But Gen X, you know, if you go down the line to the silent and the boomers. But it's important to understand that these students aren't just learning anymore. They're questioning what they're learning because that access is available to them. And the students that are up here, that frustration that you're feeling, exactly how I feel when I was trying to bring invention, innovation, new ways that aren't so archaic. But you know what we get told a lot? It's too much work. If it's too much work, they need to get out. Because these are the things that we've been wanting and demanding, and we should no longer just sit and wait for it. You all, once you organize, think about 1968, the Chicano blowout with Sal Castro, Moctezuma Esparza. They were fighting for the exact same thing. All right, remember your history. I remember my professor told me the most dangerous thing that they did is give you an education. And that is true because we know now we could access information. We're not going to be politicians who show up and take photos and post it and say we're doing a good job without doing anything. So we need to elect people who are really from the community, who love the community, and damn, who want some sidewalks, please. All right? Thank you, guys.
So we have time for one more question or comment. Anybody want to be allowed?
Hi, my name is Tyler, and sorry, I get so emotional about everything. I wanted to say, from one Filipina to another, that I appreciate you being here so much. And, sorry, I recently turned 18, and I graduate in a couple weeks. And I am barely able to finally call myself a Filipina. I'm a third generation Filipino. My mom is from the Philippines, but she considers herself more of American. She came when she was like 8 years old. I was never in touch with my culture. It was so hard for me to connect myself to being Filipino because I never grew up like that. And it was my ethnic studies teachers. They're not here right now, but my teachers like Miss Harkins and Mr. Sandino, who I love them. I wish they were here. We have Bantham and Miss Rodriguez, and they were such good influences in my life too. I love them too. But Miss Harkins and Mr. Sandino, even though they weren't Filipino, because they were my ethnic studies teachers, they taught me what being Filipino is, and that made me connect with it so much. And I'm barely graduating high school, but I am so proud to say that I am graduating as a Filipina.
Thank you. So I think. So, oh. It's because she's a student. We need to hear student voices.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Hilda Gazanfari from PV High School. So I had one comment, and first, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I'm wondering why none of the other board members are here. Because we show up to every single board meeting. We're there, like all of us. Most, like this is like half the people that show up to the board meetings. Like more people are gonna show up to the board meetings. And board members don't even try, well, besides, thank you. But more, I feel like, why are they not here? Why are they not hearing this? Like we did a whole presentation. It was like great. It was like, it literally covered what ethnic studies is, and that's what they need to know. But they're not here. So I'm like, okay, how are they gonna like realize how important this is for us when they don't know what it is? Like, I feel like they need to show up more than we do. So I just wanted to like mention that. Like I'm really frustrated with that, and hopefully they show up next time. Thank you.
Not to give myself too much credit, but when we were organizing this event, I sent the invitation to all the board members and to Dr. Contreras. Unfortunately, Dr. Contreras had a budget meeting, so we met with her. She's listening. So because she's listening, we need to speak out. But I did tell the other members of the organizing committee, Dr. Holm is the only one that's going to show up. So thank you, Dr. Holm, for showing up.
She's also the only one that reached out to Dr. Allyson Tintiangco-Cubales to ask, what is it, like the question that you had, tell me about it. She was the only one that actually reached out. They all could have done it. They all have access to her. None of them did. We're at the end. I'm just gonna mention a few little things. I'm gonna have Dr. Christine Hong talk to us a little bit about freedom schools, and then we're gonna talk really quickly about next steps, and then we'll let you go home.
There is also a statement directed to the new superintendent and the board saying bring back the CRE contract. So if you live locally, please do sign that. And so that's making the rounds right now. I know it's sort of slow going, but I want to say too that after basically an entire academic year of our going to the PVUSD board meetings and feeling incredibly disrespected and unheard, we have decided that what we would like to do, and we'd love to collaborate with you, is to have once a month ethnic studies freedom schools. And we would love to work with you. So if this is an idea that interests you, and this would be in the spirit of CRE, community responsive education, how can we imagine an educational space that is responsive to everyone in the community? So we really like, those of us who are part of the planning and the organizing for this for, many, many months, we welcome being in conversation with you.
And also because, we've been talking about board members that have not been listening to us, I do want to point out that we have Mr. Gabriel Medina, who spoke recently, who is going to be challenging Mr. Oscar Soto, who's one who has not refused to. And we also have Carol Turley, who we hope replaces Georgia Acosta. So please keep those names in mind. And maybe we can have you stand up so people know who you are. Remember that face, remember that name, because we do want people who are going to listen, not people who are going to ignore us.
So we don't want our efforts over the past year to go to waste. So please stay connected. There are flyers that have QR codes where you could scan and check the latest activities for planning and the movement. We've had excellent guest speakers from Barrios Unidos and Milpa to community organizations that are putting ethnic studies into action. Like Dr. Tintiangco-Cubales said, ethnic studies is not only for the classroom. Ethnic studies is about community, first and foremost. The reason why people like Georgia Acosta and Oscar Soto and other members of the board who have opposed the CRE contract, the reason why they oppose it is for the main reason that ethnic studies deconstructs power structures. Ethnic studies aims to spread the power and prosperity to all of us, to the community. We create the wealth. We create the community. And certain people get more of a benefit from that creation, from that activity, from that labor. And ethnic studies teaches that. It's your labor, your love, your innovation, your artistry that creates community. It's not Amazon or Microsoft or billionaires. They take the money that we create. So ethnic studies challenges that structure, and that is why they say it's anti-Semitic. That is why they say it's reverse racism. That's why they've used all the euphemisms, all the catchwords, the critical race theory, the gender studies. That's why they use those things. They use those things because they're trying to keep community from forming. Because they know once we form, once we hit that critical mass, we don't need them. They need us.